Have you ever felt that after a sudden awakening or a deep personal breakdown, something within you shifted, but instead of giving you clarity, it left you in an even stranger silence? Almost like you glimpsed behind the curtain of life, saw the illusion, the patterns, the endless noise, and then suddenly there was quiet. At first, it felt powerful, even liberating. But slowly, without drama or warning, that meaning seemed to fade away. It was as if your soul had lowered the volume of existence and simply forgotten to turn it back on again. You stopped chasing. You stopped caring, not in some reckless or destructive way, but in that quiet, heavy, almost sigh-like sense of existence. And then came the question that began whispering louder and louder. Why do I feel so numb now that I finally see the truth? Here lies the paradox. We expect awakening to ignite passion, to light us up from the inside. But for many, especially the sensitive, the introspective, the seekers, it does something unexpected. It empties us. I remember a conversation with a friend, someone bright, deeply spiritual, well-read in all the great names Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, Krishnamurti. After enduring her own dark night of the soul, she had a massive awakening. She told me she could suddenly see through the illusions of identity, of ego, of external success. She understood it. And yet only 2 months later, she found herself staring blankly at her ceiling, barely able to rise from bed. She said to me, I used to cry because I hadn't achieved enough. Now I don't care if I achieve anything at all. I thought awakening would give me fire, not leave me like this. Carl Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, had already seen this strange fog that follows awakening. Though he didn't use the spiritual language we often hear today, he knew what happens when the unconscious surfaces into awareness. He once said, enlightenment doesn't come by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. It sounds beautiful until you understand what it truly means. Because awakening is not the end. It is the beginning of a psychological death. The death of the person you thought you were. If you're curious to keep unraveling this mystery, make sure to subscribe to SYC Soul. Tap the like button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. And share this video with anyone who might need it. When awakening begins to strip away illusions, something else happens beneath the surface. The structures that once gave your life a sense of direction, your goals, your relationships, even your very sense of time, start to collapse. It feels as if the ground that supported your entire identity has crumbled away. But here's the important point. Your ego doesn't vanish in this moment. Jung would explain it differently. Your ego simply loses its map. It doesn't know where to go anymore, and without a new map, motivation seems to dissolve. So it's not that you're depressed in the ordinary sense, or that you've lost your will to live. Instead, you've entered a liminal space. You've awakened from something, but you haven't yet awakened into something else. And this is where it becomes fascinating. What you're going through isn't failure. It's not even really depression in the clinical way we often think of it. It is something much more ancient, something almost sacred. Carl Jung warned that modern society does everything it can to avoid this stage, the sacred pause, the emptiness, the in-between. Yet he believed this phase was absolutely necessary for individuation, the process of becoming your most authentic self. But nobody tells you about this part, do they? Everyone speaks about awakening as if it is pure light, joy, and clarity. Rarely does anyone mention that right after the light comes a profound fog. And that is exactly what we are unraveling here, the hidden layer of your psyche after awakening, and why this strange loss of motivation may in fact be the greatest spiritual upgrade you could ever experience if only you understand it correctly. Because here's the truth. When your old motivation falls apart, your entire operating system is being rewritten. What used to move you, the to-do lists, the ambitions, the 5-year plans, the endless drive to prove yourself suddenly stops working. And that can feel terrifying, as though you've lost yourself. But Jung had already seen this coming long before social media made spirituality a trending subject. So, what really fuels us before awakening? And what begins to emerge after? The answer takes us right to the center of Jung's work. Stay with me, because once you see this clearly, the fog you're in will start to make a lot more sense. For most of your life, your energy and drive came from a single source, the ego identity, the version of me you believed yourself to be. You wanted to prove yourself, to be noticed, to be loved, to succeed. None of this was wrong. It was simply how human development naturally unfolds. Carl Jung had a name for this mask we wear, the persona. The persona is the face we present to society, so we can belong, achieve, and function. But when the awakening process begins, that mask gets stripped away. Suddenly, you're no longer trying to be admired or win the game, because you now see the game for what it is. And this is where things get unsettling. Without the mask, all the goals that once energized you stop fitting. They were designed for a version of you that no longer exists. It feels almost like being an actor who has walked off stage, but no longer remembers the lines or even the role they were supposed to play. That's the heart of the unmotivated feeling. It isn't that you've lost your drive. It's that the fuel you once relied on has burned out. Carl Jung emphasized that our task is not to destroy the ego, but to integrate it and align it with something far greater. He called this individuation the journey from being a fragmented, mass-driven identity into a whole, unified self. This deeper self is not chasing validation or applause. It's not even interested in clarity in the way the ego is. Instead, it is oriented toward truth, toward authenticity, toward the soul. And once awakening starts, your psyche begins to recalibrate itself. It rejects anything false, anything forced, anything tied to the shallow patterns of ego. Jobs, relationships, ambitions, even carefully crafted visions that once seemed so important, they all begin to lose their hold. That is why so many people describe awakening as both liberating and deeply disorienting. Because Jung gave a warning. If we stop here, we risk getting stuck. Many fall into what he called spiritual bypassing. They convince themselves that nothing matters, that everything is an illusion, and so they disconnect. They float, they numb out. They mistake detachment for disengagement. But the self, the deeper center within you, wants something entirely different. It doesn't want to escape life. It wants to embody life more fully than you ever imagined. And this is where the story takes a surprising turn. The deeper self within you isn't here to reject the world. It doesn't want you to drift endlessly in detachment. Instead, it wants to live through you. It wants to bring something higher into human form, to allow heaven, as Jung might phrase it, to move through the body, the mind, and the heart. Awakening, then, is not about escaping the world. It is about redefining your role in it. But here's the challenge. Before that new role can emerge, you pass through a strange middle phase. Jung described it with remarkable clarity, though most people don't realize they're in it while it's happening. After awakening, there is a stage that few ever speak about. It isn't glamorous, it doesn't look mystical, and it rarely earns admiration. It doesn't resemble meditating on a mountaintop or writing profound quotes for social media. Instead, it looks like sitting in silence, unable to explain yourself, while the rest of the world rushes forward. Carl Jung would say, you are not lost. You are between identities. You've loosened your grip on the ego, but you haven't yet discovered how to fully live from the self. This in-between is not failure, it is initiation, a rite of passage. Yet in our culture of productivity and constant action, this stillness often gets mistaken for laziness. Pause is misread as paralysis, and so you begin to judge yourself. But in truth, that judgment only blocks the very energy your soul is trying to call back. Jung even gave this transition a name. Enantiodromia, the process at which things eventually swing into their opposite. After awakening, the pendulum within you shifts from ego-driven striving to soul-level stillness. You swing from "I must do everything" to "Why do anything at all?" And though it feels uncomfortable, this swing is sacred. It is how balance is restored. In ancient myths, this stage is called the hermit phase, or the death before rebirth. Just as the caterpillar dissolves into formless liquid before becoming a butterfly, you, too, dissolve into something unrecognizable before transformation arrives. Quick pause here. If this resonates with you, tell me in the comments where you are watching this from. Are you connecting with these truths? And if you appreciate this work, let me know below. It means a lot. Now let's keep unfolding Jung's hidden wisdom. In this cocoon-like stage, everything familiar begins to dissolve. The ego panics because it craves identity, action, and direction. Yet the self quietly whispers, "Let go." Something deeper is being built. This is where much of modern spirituality skips over the difficult part. You've probably heard phrases like, "Just follow your joy," or "Stay in high vibes only." While intention and positive energy have value, Carl Jung would caution that avoiding darkness means avoiding the gold that lies hidden within it. Shadow integration, the work of facing your repressed and uncomfortable parts, is not optional. It is the very core of becoming whole. The stillness you feel right now, that sense of emptiness or even confusion, is not failure. It is sacred ground. In this space, the unconscious finally has the chance to rise into awareness. Your psyche is wise enough to stall motivation, to pause clarity, even to slow your outer drive, because without slowing down, you would never have space to face what you have buried. That is the real work of individuation. And here comes the paradox. When you stop resisting the void, when you allow yourself to feel it instead of running from it, something begins to shift. Motivation starts to return, but it doesn't look the same. It isn't frantic. It isn't driven by performance. It isn't hustling for external approval. Instead, it emerges as something quieter, older, and far more authentic. It feels like remembering, not chasing. Carl Jung described this as the emergence of the self not as an abstract idea, but as a living inner compass. This is the stage where the silence, the pause, the in-between finally starts to give birth to something new within you. Not with fireworks or dramatic epiphanies, but with a gentle, steady pull. Not toward the old life you left behind, but toward a life that is being created anew. If this journey speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe to SYC Soul. Hit the like button, tap the notification bell so you never miss upcoming insights, and share this with someone who might be silently navigating the same path. Together, we can bring more light to those walking through their darkest transitions. And now, let's step deeper into what Jung called the symbolic life, the next chapter of transformation. Walking through the void teaches you something profound. Once the silence has been endured, the self begins to awaken in a completely different way. This new motivation is not about chasing goals or trying to prove yourself. It is softer, steadier, and rooted in a deeper sense of truth. Jung described it as the point where the self begins to live, not as a theory, but as an inner compass that quietly guides you. This is why, after awakening, your actions may look smaller on the outside, but feel infinitely larger within. You no longer burn energy trying to force clarity. Instead, you recognize it when it appears. You are not hustling to be seen, to achieve, or to fit in. You are simply responding to what feels aligned. Jung called this stage the symbolic life. It's the moment when your choices, your intuitions, your dreams, and even small synchronicities start to become guidance. And here's what often surprises people. Living from the self doesn't mean you'll always feel perfectly motivated or endlessly inspired. You will still face fatigue, confusion, even grief. That's part of being human. But what disappears is that constant sense of betrayal you once carried, the heaviness of dragging yourself, through a life that no longer fits. Instead, new patterns emerge. You might notice yourself creating simply because it feels right, even if no one is watching. You might decline opportunities that look perfect on paper, but don't resonate with your soul. You may find yourself drawn to curiosity rather than obligation, to peace rather than performance. This is the shift from ego-driven ambition to soul-driven alignment. Carl Jung emphasized that this shift doesn't reject ambition entirely, it transforms it. Ambition becomes devotion. It becomes energy directed toward truth, growth, and presence. And strangely, this kind of drive is more sustainable and effective than the ego's restless striving ever was. It doesn't burn out, it deepens. So if you've been feeling like your spark has gone missing after awakening, remember, it isn't gone. The old flame has simply burned down so that a quieter, steadier fire can be lit. This is the self's motivation, not to impress, but to express. Carl Jung was clear. No one reaches wholeness without facing the shadow. The symbolic life, the guidance of the self, cannot be lived fully if you continue to deny what you've hidden away. The shadow holds the parts of you that the ego refused to see: anger, fear, shame, desire, wounds you didn't want to admit. Awakening doesn't erase these. It invites them forward. At first, this can feel discouraging. You might think, I've awakened. Why am I still meeting darkness? But Jung explained that this confrontation is proof that the process is real. The unconscious must surface. What you've avoided for years doesn't vanish overnight. It returns to be integrated, not destroyed. This is why, even after awakening, you may still find yourself struggling. Old patterns rise again. Forgotten emotions come back. Relationships press your old wounds. Instead of judging yourself for not being spiritual enough, Jung would remind you, this is the work. Each shadow that returns is a chance to reclaim a piece of yourself. Integration means no longer rejecting what is human within you, but understanding its place in the whole. The shadow isn't only negative. Within it also lies creativity, passion, and strength that were buried because they didn't fit your earlier identity. By turning toward the shadow, you uncover hidden gifts. Jung saw this as a turning point. The very qualities you once suppressed are often the ones that will guide your path forward. And here is the paradox again. The more willing you are to face what hurts, the more energy you free. Avoidance drains you, but integration restores you. That is why the motivation of the self feels deeper and steadier. It is not scattered by repression. It is whole. This is the stage where dreams often become vivid. Jung, a master of dream analysis, saw them as messages from the unconscious, revealing both shadow and guidance. Symbols appear not to confuse you, but to help you understand what words cannot yet express. So if the darkness rises again, remember, it's not a setback. It's the self, asking you to gather what was lost. The shadow doesn't come to punish it, comes to complete you. As the shadow begins to integrate, something remarkable unfolds. Symbols start to guide your path. Carl Jung devoted much of his life to showing that the psyche speaks in images, not in logic alone. Archetypes, myths, dreams, and repeating patterns are not random. They are the language of the unconscious, pointing toward the next step in individuation. You may notice this in small ways. A recurring dream that carries the same theme. A symbol that keeps appearing in books, conversations, or even daily life. Or an image that seems to emerge from within during meditation or reflection. Jung taught that these are not coincidences. They are signals from the deeper layers of your psyche, directing your attention where it is most needed. But here's the challenge. The ego often dismisses symbols. It wants facts, clarity, straightforward answers. Yet the self doesn't speak in linear explanations. It speaks in mystery, in metaphors, in images that slowly unfold their meaning over time. That is why patience is essential. Jung described the process as living with symbols allowing them to work on you, rather than rushing to solve them like puzzles. This is where the symbolic life takes on its full meaning. To live symbolically is to treat your inner world as significant, to see dreams as guidance, to notice synchronicities as more than chance. It is not superstition. It is alignment with the deeper intelligence of the psyche. The symbols you meet are not external instructions. They are mirrors of your own unfolding. For example, the archetype of the hero may arise when you need courage. The image of the wise old man may appear when guidance is required. The presence of the shadow in dreams may signal that integration is still incomplete. Each image holds a message about where you are and where you are headed. And though this may sound mysterious, Jung insisted it is practical. By honoring symbols, you stay in dialogue with the unconscious, preventing it from overwhelming you. Instead of being dragged by forces you don't understand, you consciously walk with them. So if you find your life filling with strange coincidences, dreams, or repeating signs, don't ignore them. They may be the very way your deeper self is calling you toward wholeness. Carl Jung emphasized that individuation is never only about personal comfort. It isn't self-improvement in the ordinary sense. It's a calling to serve something larger than yourself. Once the self begins to awaken and symbols guide your path, you discover that your life has a deeper purpose. This is not about grandiosity or becoming extraordinary. It is about alignment with what Jung called the greater whole. At this stage, your journey stops being just about your own healing. The energy of wholeness you cultivate naturally extends outward. You begin to notice how your presence affects others. Perhaps you bring calm into chaos, or insight into confusion, or compassion into spaces where it is rare. You don't have to force this. It happens because the self radiates through you. Jung often warned against identifying too strongly with this role. The ego might try to claim credit. I am the healer. I am the wise one. But in truth, the individual is only a vessel. The greater self flows through you, not from you. When you forget this, you risk inflation, believing you are more than human. True individuation keeps humility intact, because you recognize the source is beyond the ego. This is also where service becomes natural. It doesn't mean you must preach, teach, or build something massive. Service might look as simple as listening deeply to a friend, raising a child with presence, or creating art that carries authentic meaning. Whatever form it takes, it emerges not from duty, but from authenticity. And here's the subtle paradox. The more you give from this place, the more whole you become. Individuation isn't a solitary achievement locked inside you. It's a rhythm between inner growth and outer expression. The self wants to live in the world, not only in silence. So when Jung spoke of individuation, he meant more than personal balance. He meant participation in life at its deepest level. Your transformation is not only for you, it is also for the collective. Every act of integration, every piece of shadow reclaimed, adds to the healing of the larger field we all share. This is why Jung's vision remains timeless. Individuation isn't isolation, it's contribution. Carl Jung's lifelong message was clear. Wholeness is not perfection. Wholeness means embracing every part of yourself, light and shadow, joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion. The goal is not to erase what is human, but to live so fully that nothing within you is rejected. This is the essence of individuation. Awakening begins as a disruption, pulling you away from old identities. Then comes the void, the silence where motivation disappears. After that, shadow work emerges, symbols begin to guide you, and slowly, a new life takes form. This path is rarely easy, but it is real. And as Jung taught, the deepest truth is that you are not walking it for yourself alone. You are walking it for the collective soul of humanity. Living from the self does not guarantee constant happiness, but it grants something greater, meaning. Even suffering becomes meaningful, because it is woven into the larger pattern of growth. Even mistakes become meaningful because they lead to greater awareness. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is outside the process. This is why Jung's work continues to speak across generations. In a world that often pushes for quick fixes, his psychology invites us to honor the long, mysterious path of becoming whole. And perhaps that is why you are here now, because some part of you recognizes this truth. The voice of the self has called, and you have listened. If you carry anything forward from this, let it be this. You are not broken for feeling lost, uncertain, or shadowed. You are in the very process Jung described. The pause is part of the path. The darkness is part of the light. And the journey itself is the transformation. Before we close, if this message has touched you, make sure to subscribe to SYC Soul, hit the like button, tap the notification bell so you never miss what's coming next, and share this video with someone who might be walking through their own awakening. Your support keeps this work alive, and your sharing may give hope to someone who needs it most. Carl Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That is the journey you are on. Walk it with patience, courage, and trust.